Hello everyone, welcome to this session of Alpha Tuesdays. Just going to do a quick mic check to make sure you guys can hear me. Hello, hello. Excellent. Thank you, Thomas. All right. Exciting review for today.
Bluetooth input.
Apologies. So yeah, today we will review Morpheus Network. And, you know, I chose Morpheus Network just because I wanted to review a lower market cap token this week, and you know, this one is right around 15 million market cap, or some would say 19 million, depending on if you count the team's wallet tokens, since they are fully distributed. And you know, after GMX's review last week, it scored what I thought was pretty well, but I wanted one that maybe didn't score as well, just so I could give an example of one that was, you know, basically to shine GMX in a better light. But I was quite surprised after I started digging into this one. So with that said, let's jump right in. Bear with me here. Okay, we're looking good. Disclaimer as usual, this is for entertainment only. Okay, just as last week, the Supernova55 tool that I use has these sections in it for which I score as objectively as possible. Let's start. So what is Morpheus? It's a blockchain-based automated global supply chain, and it's not actually a chain. It functions on Ethereum, but it's actually a middleware technology offering automated supply chain functionality for the global trading industry. Now, it's what we often hear. We hear software as a solution, and the key point here is that it is chain agnostic, and it's a chain agnostic middleware platform. It automates processes and notarizes transactions at every data point from end to end. And that's all well and good, but you know, what value does its token have? And the token is MNW, and it is baked in to the functionality of the platform. It's required for settlement and payments. And so the team, another key point is the Morpheus team. These guys are all-stars within the supply chain field. They're well connected. They've evolved rapidly in uptaking knowledge and incorporating blockchain functionality within the platform. And they've been around since 2016. This is when they first envisioned this idea. And they've been knocking out goals and achieving on a consistent basis since that time. Another interesting feature is the utilization of masternodes. And utilizing masternodes, it increases the decentralized security of the network. Basically, the more nodes you get online in a distributed manner, the stronger the network is, as you have all of these nodes validating transactions. And the team set it up as a side chain. So actually they set up a side chain for transactions, for like microtransactions, and that's what the masternodes are validating. And they reward long-term speculators with 18% APR for 6-month lockup minimums for the 1,800 MNWs per node. So you can see that as a middleware platform that's chain agnostic, they can utilize any number of other softwares or services to impact and improve processes that are seen within the global supply chain. So first we'll look at the idea. So we've heard a lot about global supply chain in terms of blockchain over the past 6 years or so. It's, blockchain is like, it's very, I don't know, I want to say it's like the blockchain and global supply chain is like peanut butter and jelly. But have there been any big breakthroughs? Yeah, I don't know. It's a huge industry, $15 trillion industry, and ripe for disruption due to the inefficiencies. And I think the biggest point is trusted data. And synchronizing data, tracking shipments, automating payments, transactions, recording and verifying the status of the goods at each point along the way. Effectively, every data point in the supply chain is a point of potential loss of revenue, if it's not automated or if the data cannot be trusted. So Morpheus, they envisioned and have created a sort of turnkey, modularized, chain agnostic middleware platform that utilizes this MNW token. And the tokens are used to pay for two key functions within the platform: automating processes and notarizing transactions and data sets immutably. Additionally, the masternodes are utilized on the sidechain, as I mentioned, and they've incorporated ZK rollup functionality. Now, this technology has been around for quite some time, but we're seeing a lot of chains and projects adopt it. From my understanding, it's effectively blocking the data from visualization for any external party, but both parties on each end can verify the authenticity of the data. It's a very simple way to put it. So masternodes. If you were around in 2017, 2016, really I think this probably peaked in 2018. You think of masternodes. I know this is kind of what I think. This is what the chart of a masternode project generally looked like from that time. Now, Now I know they didn't all look like that. Dash was one of the first big ones to incorporate validators on a proof of stake chain, and in effect, rewarding these validators with a yield. I know I got heavily involved in masternodes in 2017, 2018, and they pretty much, the price of most all of them. With the trouble is with super high yields, as with anything, if it's simply token emission, it's just a inflation doom spiral, and it creates a chart that looks like this. Now, that was one of the big questions when reviewing this project is, what is the team going to do to prevent their token from looking like this? And I'd say there's a few things, but first let's talk about the masternodes for sidechain validation. So let's just talk about the functionality first. Now, the Morpheus network token, M&W, is all transactions that occur on their platform. They're settled 3 times a day on Ethereum's chain. Now, they did that to decrease gas costs, and it's not necessary to have every transaction broadcast to the chain. I mean, you want to have the integrity for every transaction, obviously. So they came up with an in-house sort of layer 2 solution that operates as a side chain, and it's effectively a proof of stake mechanism, and this reduces gas costs and improves scalability, and allows them to offer the masternode functionality, which, as we mentioned, 18% APR. Now, 18% is fairly low, especially compared to the absurd yields that were advertised, and the yields that ended up killing a lot of the projects that were pure masternode projects from 2018. So that's one thing. I mean, that's pretty low. That's not a massive supply pressure, though it could be an issue, except that all tokens have been distributed already, so we're not emitting new tokens. The payments for the masternodes occur with tokens that are already in circulation, tokens that have been purchased by clients on the network. And so this drastically reduces the supply pressure. I mean, sure, there will be some pressure, but it's thought that the demand, as the ecosystem grows and more players utilize the platform, that it will far outstretch the 18% payouts. So for the idea, I gave Morpheus a 5 out of 5. It's just with the idea of this middle, where this chain agnostic technology, it's very well positioned, and a really good idea that they have both. They have come a long way in development. Sorry, I had to deal with my kids for a moment. Okay, continuing on. Competition. So one of the biggest competitors we think of is VeChain, and they had a massive following and marketing endeavor in 2019, and they grew enormously. Now they had a huge amount of funding, and but the biggest thing with VeChain versus Morpheus is that they created their own chain, the VeChain, I believe it's called, and that effectively makes any company that chooses them, that makes them reliant on that chain. Now, this was something that was really, that really stood out to me whenever I was first reviewing this project back in 2018, 2019, because it is agnostic. But also other projects, when you talk about interoperability, that's one thing that that really puts some of these projects head and shoulders above others, is if they can operate without being solely reliant. Now you could argue that, well, there's atomic swaps and this and that, but if you're talking about enterprises utilizing a chain for various purposes, I mean, it's a major feat economically, and it's very resource intensive to maintain software if you're on multiple chains. But if you have a solution that just bridges between the two, or any number of chains, then it's better positioned, in my opinion. Now, you could look at this market cap and say, well, the people have spoken, but I think we'll see somewhat of a flushing out as more of the world realizes, what the costs are of committing to a solution that is reliant on their chain. This is one of the things that I really feel like position Morpheus really well, and we could talk about some others as well. I mean, Quant is one that it's completely chain agnostic, and that's why one of the reasons it's positioned really well and done really well. Some of the others in this space, they're somewhat similar market cap. Origin Trail is more of a blockchain as a service. TE Foods, these guys have been around for quite some time, and they started out with food specifically in the food supply chain, and they've branched out to other sectors within that industry. And it's a similar service. Looking at Cargo X, also somewhat similar. I mean, if you look at it from a drawdown perspective and what their all-time highs were, they're all roughly the same. Morpheus has had the greatest drawdown of these, and given that VeChain is really the front runner in this space, I scored this as a 2 out of 3. So looking at feasibility, the tech in place, and the timing and user growth, the global supply chain narrative is pretty old. It's an old narrative in terms of cryptocurrency and blockchain years, if you will. But it's still well timed for disruption, especially given the supply chain problems that are occurring, throughout the world in this post-COVID era. We find ourselves constantly faced with these issues. So obviously there's still a big problem. With such inefficiencies, it also offers a big opportunity for improvement, and within that growth, speculation. And just looking specifically at Morpheus, their technology has been progressing. They've been upgrading their platform continuously since 2016, and they've advanced user growth as well through tons of new partnerships. I mean, multiple partnerships, implementations. We'll look at partnerships specifically later on in that scoring matrix, in that scoring section. But I think the timing is very well timed. Even though they've already had a massive pump cycle within this sector, I think there's still plenty of time for these guys to be a major disruptor. And so I gave this score a 5 out of 5 for that. Let's look at some tokenomics. Now, their launch occurred via ICO in 2018. Total supply is 47 million. Circulating supply, this is something that's interesting. In my opinion, it equals total supply, because all the tokens have been distributed and unlocked. Now, some data repositories don't include team wallet tokens for whatever reason, and I think it's because in some ways it's not in circulation because the team is not circulating them. The fact that it could be circulated, I mean, that's something to consider. And they were distributed 12 million initially. I think I have it on the slide here. So the team got 12 million tokens originally in February of 2018, and they still have 10.2 million. So that's only 14% sold. It's pretty interesting. And those tokens became fully unlocked 18 months after the ICO. So circulating supply is 100% or 78%, depending on what you want to look at. The reason it's still relevant is if we're trying to assess market cap over time, then we kind of have to adhere to the figures that are used by whatever data source we're looking at. If we want to compare current market cap and volume and things of that nature to historical values. So the pre-mine was pretty high at 25%. But it was unlocked. Those tokens were unlocked late 2019. And on the one hand, it shows solid financial responsibility, but it does pose a threat nonetheless, because those tokens are there, and for any number of reasons they could be dumped by the team. I'd say the risk is reduced because of the track record of the team, and their performance and their obvious desire to achieve their goals within this space. Nonetheless, it is a threat. There's no other supply threats, no other VC unlocks or anything like that. So, I was kind of on the fence about giving this a 2 out of 4 versus 3 out of 4, but I feel like since tokens are fully distributed, I mean, that's what we want, for a project. We don't want any major unlocks coming or anything like that. And even with the tokens sitting in the team's wallet, I lean towards a 3 on this one, just because in the spirit of finding that supernova, something that can pump tremendously, and the fact that there was already a pump, this 182x pump that occurred from the all-time low to the all-time high. If the team didn't sell then, I don't think there's a big risk of them selling. I think that shows they're extremely responsible financially, and it's a good sign. So I gave it a 3 out of 4. This is ICO data, just of interest. The ICO price was 50 cents, listed at 50 cents. I'm not sure why it says average price is 6 cents. They raised 10 million. That was the main thing I was looking at. This is a snapshot of the 2 team wallets. Interestingly, these tokens are still in MRPH, which was the previous token, and there was a swap that occurred, a 1-to-1 swap in October of last year, and they're giving everyone a 1-year window to swap their tokens. So the deadline is October 18th, I believe, of 2022. And so I think it's probably intentional. The team is showing people that, hey, we're not even converting our tokens yet. You have time. They don't want to spook anyone. Maybe they're speculating too much. In any case, there they are. So let's look at cash flow, organic growth, and sustainability. So Morpheus has a pretty cool revenue fee structure in place. And though we can't view any of the metrics, they're already earning a revenue. And they calculate their platform revenue by the software as a service function that clients pay for, plus this global settlement fee, which is a 1% fee for end users only when the platform module is used for settlement. And integration and services within the platform. And additionally, for those securing a network via masternodes, this is more for speculators. It's also a solid incentivization for people to support the project. If you're going to hold a token, why not stake it, help secure the network, and earn 18% APR for your efforts. Now, obviously the revenue model is much more complex than what I've put here, and I don't want to go into the nitty-gritty of some of this stuff. I do have an in-depth review that I created. It's 24 pages. It goes way more in depth. So a lot of these scores that I'm giving, it's based on a lot more information than what I'm covering here. I just want to really hit the highlights and let you guys know that you can get this in-depth review and really see what went into my research and why I gave the scores that I gave. All you have to do is look under the operations channel. I will be posting it there soon, this in-depth review. We may do a page on the website where you would have to go to the site to view the review. Not completely decided on that. Either way, you guys can view this in-depth analysis by going to subvertotradingclub.com and signing up with your email address. You can give a fake name if you want. You just need a working email address. And then jump into the Discord And from within the Discord, you go to the GameFi section and the operations channel. And from there, that's where I will be posting this 24-page review. In any case, these guys get a 5 out of 5 for their cash flow model and their organic growth and sustainability. I mean, I've seen all sorts of different ways in which they can grow. I mean, the inefficiencies alone within global supply chains, you know, if these guys can do what they are claiming they can do, I mean, it's a no-brainer for any company. And, you know, the Morpheus team is active, and they're at all kinds of conferences all over the world all the time. You know, they post blogs regularly, and they're obviously very intent on seeing this succeed. So let's look at some development and milestones. As I mentioned, this idea formed in 2016, and you know, I couldn't imagine looking at, you know, what it would take to develop a platform like this from the ground up. But these guys had the vision, and they got to work. And what's interesting is they saw a niche for where they could utilize blockchain as a part of their solution to solve the problems within the supply chain. And, you know, that's a monumental endeavor. I mean, no other way to look at it. And, you know, they have come a long way since the idea took shape, and they've built a functioning, you know, middleware platform. They've secured global partnerships, and they've established global multi-industry pilot projects, and they continue to build, connect. They're receiving awards all the time, and it's pretty cool that they were able to incorporate a token within all of this, because, you know, I mean, there's plenty of blockchain projects that don't incorporate a token, and, you know, where they're utilizing R3 Corda or some other technology where, you know, they don't need a token. But I think it's pretty cool that these guys also envisioned the need for a token, and to strengthen the decentralization component and incentivize users to create demand for the token. And it's pretty brilliant. And just looking at some of their awards, I mean, there's all kinds of awards, things I've never heard of, but, you know, they're knocking it down. Gulf Tanner Future of Ports competition, winner of the 2021 ISCA PTAC Award for Supply Chain Excellence, and they were finalists for the Entrepreneurship World Cup Award, as well as the 2021 Blockchain Revolution Global Enterprise Award. You know, it's just a good sign to see that they're still building, they're still receiving awards, they're still forming partnerships. You know, it's just a good sign to see that, regardless of what these awards are. I mean, they're active, they're out there getting after it. Interestingly, the token has undergone 2 migrations. The first one was from Morph, MORPH, to MRPH, and then they dubbed this iteration Morpheus Network Blue. And then last October, I mentioned they underwent another migration from MRPH to MNW, which they call Morpheus Network Black. And token swaps are no small feat. I've seen plenty of teams fail. I've seen teams lock up holders' tokens for weeks. So that's an achievement in and of itself to have undergone token swaps without issue. And they said they did this as a response to expanding needs for the platform. So that also shows that they are growing with time. So I gave them a 5 out of 5 for that as well. The team is impressive, to say the least. And you'll notice that I'm throwing out some 5s here on several of these scores, whereas like GMX did not get the 5s on all of these. It's just because it's a total package. I mean, and it really starts with a team, in my opinion, and I think you cannot underestimate the value of a cohesive team that is able to handle challenges and knock out milestones year after year. If we delve into these team members, these are all supply chain guys, for the most part. I mean, they have some broad experience as well. Some members with experience in tax compliant, Deloitte, senior tax manager on the team, as well as some others who maybe they're not all stars, like they're not some big name that everybody knows. I mean, maybe if you're in supply chain, you probably know these guys. One of the members was CEO of DHL for 10 years. And I mean, if you can imagine the connections that a person can make as a CEO of such a large multinational company, I mean that's extremely valuable. When looking for a project with growth potential, I mean, connections can be everything, and that's where sometimes we have to just sort of extrapolate and connect the dots. But these guys are well connected within the global supply chain industry, and they've shown themselves to be extremely competent in building out a functioning platform that utilizes blockchain as a component of its functionality. Another thing I wanted to mention is this company, Winjit. So this is one of India's leading technology providers in the area of innovating engineering solutions across industries. They're adept in the areas of blockchain, product engineering, fintech, as well as AI and machine learning. Now, it's interesting because several of the guys on the team actually came from Winjit and worked together there. And that makes it really interesting that they left Winjit and are now working on this endeavor, and then they actually partnered with Winjit. I think it's just a really good sign. It adds to the overall assessment, and that speaks well of the team. And so they got a 5. I don't know, like, with the level of experience. Again, I've listed all of their experience in the in-depth analysis, and I'll spare you all the details there. But it's impressive. I mean, these guys are stacked, and they obviously work well together. It's it's not enough just to have a stacked team. I think you need to show results, and the fact that they've shown results and ability to produce over time, that's why they get a 5. In terms of all-stars, I gave them a 2. They seem like all-stars within their own right and as an aggregate, but there's no mega all-star that's going to garner, some massive hype speculation, I think in a way maybe that's part of what, VeChain had, in addition to the funding, is the I want to say the CEO and founder of VeChain was also the creator of QTUM, QTUM. Anyhow, this bit of a aside. Looking at the public communication interaction, these guys are impressive with their community engagement. They are prolific with their blogs, and the AMAs. The CEO just had an AMA on July 1st, and it's very informative. He's kind of a quirky guy, and he's excited. He's obviously very passionate about what he's doing, and you have to think he's 6 years into a cryptocurrency blockchain based endeavor. Now that's like 60 years, in regular time. I think anybody that's been in this space long enough, and I'm just making that assessment as a trader and degenerate of cryptocurrency. These guys have been in the trenches building for years, and they continue to maintain this passion and this community outreach. It's impressive. And this screenshot's from Masari, just showing their Twitter followers have been steadily increasing since I think this is the date that Masari started capturing this data in January. So they get a 3 out of 3 for their public interaction. All right, I mentioned partnerships and funding earlier as something we would look into a little bit more. It's kind of silly, the amount of partnerships they have. Marsh, Global Risk Management House, Beta, Gulf Tanner, and ISCA is the International Supply Chain Education Alliance. Just looking back at Beta, this Blockchain in Transport Alliance, and they're a standard setter for the industry. This is another thing that's really interesting about Morpheus, is that as one of their goals, they've mentioned that they aim to set the global standards for regulatory and compliance. They're really carving out a path, and they hold themselves to a very high standard because they want to set the standard. And I think that's pretty key as well. Vitalcan is a large raw materials and packaging entity in Argentina. It operates internationally. I didn't even list Federated Cooperatives Limited out of Western Canada. You have Max Inter-Americas, Geometric Energy Corporation. Some people may know these guys. Let's see, from the Doge 1. Yeah, that's the Doge 1 was the first ever lunar payload space mission funded entirely by crypto. So that's pretty cool. They're partnered with those guys. Just the list goes on. They did some work with the Department of Homeland Security recently to work with counterfeit products, addressing counterfeit products and intellectual property rights, proof of concept. And as I mentioned before, their funding was done through a public ICO raise. So there's nothing special there. 10 million. There's no big war chest or anything. But as we have seen, the team is extremely financially responsible, having only sold 14% of their tokens, even through a 182x pump. So they get a 3 out of 3 for this metric. And just nearing the end here, looking at volume to market cap ratio. It's somewhat low, 0.67 to 2% on any given day across all captured exchanges. Now, they're not on any big exchanges. I'd say that it's second tier exchanges. Some could argue with me that KuCoin is not second tier, but they do a massive amount of volume, so there's that. BKEX also does a massive amount of volume. Okay, so they are available on those exchanges. It's something worth noting is this volume spike that occurred on May 26th. I mean, this could be some anomaly, but I don't think it is, because it sort of marked the beginning of this markup. And May 26, 2020, had 31.3 million daily volume. Price was 25 cents at the time. And what's crazy is even when the price had all-time high in November of 2021, it maxed at like 7 million a day. And otherwise it stayed in sort of the upper the 500,000 to upper $2 million range per day. I mean, that's pretty low. It's actually quite low in general relative to some other projects, but it's sort of what they trade at. So you have to kind of look at what their history of trading is, and that's sort of their volume band in that zone. And taking that and looking at where volume is now, it's persisted in the low to mid 100Ks, a couple 100K down to 100K last several months in this downtrend. It finally broke below the 100K per day amount recently. And interestingly, that's what we saw prior to the pump day in 2020. Is we saw sub 100K volumes. And so, that was just a really long range. And we'll look at the chart here in a moment. This is a really long range for like 300 or 400 days or something prior to that big volume pump. And then it started to exit that range and marked up and ended up going to a high of $5.50, I believe. So, in effect, this is quite positive. This is what I look for in this metric. I want to see some sustained volume, both generally. 100K a day. That's still some volume. I've seen a lot worse. On some of these projects that I'm looking to review. But we also want to look at it relative to their volume history, and it's pretty much in line with their volume band over time. So it's solid. There's still trading interest, and this is what we want to see for Supernova picks. I mean, it's not on some big exchange. Okay, it's on KuCoin. It's not on Binance or FTX or God forbid Coinbase. But Coinbase is good for a pump. A lot of people say projects get listed on Coinbase and that's where they die. But it's good for a pump also. And at some point, I think that narrative will change as we cycle. Only in the past year or so did Coinbase just start, listing everything under the sun. For the longest time, there was 4 or 5 coins there. I mean, for years, 5 years or so. So I think over time things will cycle back through. And Quant got listed on Coinbase and did around like $50-$60 and ended up going to 425. So anyhow, the point being, for a Supernova pick, you want to see it with sustained volume on sort of lower tier exchanges, because it's just a big opportunity. Big opportunity to accumulate, to sort of fly under the radar before it gets this massive volume that can move the price around much more easily. So I ended up giving him a 3 for this one. I really sort of struggled with whether to give them a 2 or a 3. But in the interest of finding a supernova, I think this is the right picture. This is the right picture. So I ended up going with a 3. And let's look at some charts here. And first we'll look at the intra-sector price movement since December 2020. And this is just five different projects within the supply chain space. I'm sure there's probably some out there that I missed, but these are the main ones that come to mind, chartable. I included UBT here just because on the community wiki page for Morpheus, there's some question about what's the difference between UBT and Morpheus. So I included that. And we can see, what we can tell from this chart is December 2020 was when the big bull run started. I remember in Subverto, I remember explicitly Sear saying in one of his reviews, he said, "Choose your winners now, because we are about to exit this range for a long time." And interestingly, we can see here within this sector, Morpheus was one of the first to pump. And, it kind of had the big pump, the second sort of lower pump, and now it's just tapering off. VeChain, I think it's actually VEN now since they did their swap, but it used to be VET. VeChain pumped second, and they actually did an 82x pump, I believe. It went from 200 mil market cap up to 16.9 billion. Not too shabby. And then just from there's not too much to take from this. Track hasn't really had a pump. TE Foods, which is now Ton, they have started to show a lot of strength lately. They've never really had a great pump, which I'm surprised about. It's another project I did an in-depth review on from 2018, 2019. It had been accumulating, and took some profits whenever they did have a little mini pump last year, but I think they're still due. And so next, let's look at Morpheus specifically on the weekly chart. As you can see, we have this sort of double range. Initially, I only had the lower range, but then I realized when I copied the lower range, it fit very well. So it's an effective double channel, tale of two channels. So we're in the upper channel now, and you can imagine after a pump like this, it's 182x from the low, absolute low, all the way to the top. This is going to take some time. This it's going to take some time to charge back up. I mean, look at the amount of time it took previously to run, and feasibly, this is going to allow plenty of time to accumulate for this token. And so I'm going to set my accumulation for this at 12 months or so, and just slowly accumulate. I mean, there may be some pumps in between where we leave these channels, but most likely I think we probably just grind around in these channels, at least the upper channel, for some time. I could be wrong, I can't tell the future, but often that's what these assets will do, especially after a big pump like that. Yeah, there's plenty of time. So based on that, I gave it a 3 out of 5 for this, where it is in its cycle. And just in determining what I gave the score for this, I kind of waffled a bit and really thought hard about, well, what would give it a 4? What would give it a 5? I mean, I would think a 5 would be a long sideways, possibly an initial dump right out of the gate, if it just happened to be timed with, say, the end of a bull market. Dump out of the gate, long period of sideways, and we've yet to reclaim all-time high, but we've held sideways. That's probably a 5. There's going to be some other factors to consider, but that's ideal. That's Morpheus Network. Morpheus Network, and actually did in 2018, 2019, the group I was with, he scored it like almost perfect, 29 out of 30. And that's how I would have done it for this area too. Anywhere in here, I mean, that's a 5 out of 5 because it's just accumulation, and eventually it's going to leave this zone. I mean, this is quant, and it had several ranges, but let's say $3 to $6 range, and then again in like the $10 to $16 range. What would give it a 4 is, let's say we start doing this here, it becomes a 4, but it's going to be a short time period, right? Because that's kind of like screaming, okay, it's time to go. Because when you range for such a long time and then you exit that range, that's go time generally. And that's a long time for crypto. June 2018 all the way to, what is that, November 2020. It's a long time in crypto years. Anyhow, they get a 3. Morpheus gets a 3 for the chart where it is in its pump cycle. It's kind of a good thing that we're here. This gives plenty of time to accumulate. So that's why it got a 3 and not a 2. If it starts dumping below the range, this old range, that's not a good sign, and it would get points deducted. On-chain activity, GitHub, there's no data that I could find. TVL, it's not applicable. And so for any project that has this sort of data where it's not available, it just gets a 2 out of 3 by default. So what's our score? Our score is 49 out of 55. This really surprised me. I went into this expecting to shine a good light on GMX, and I was very surprised. I would go so far, and I was thinking this while I was doing the review and looking into everything in depth, and the way these guys have positioned themselves, their technology and the platform and its utility, and the way that the token is necessary for functioning. I mean, it's pretty astounding. And it honestly reminds me of quant. You know, Morpheus. I would go so far as to say Morpheus network is the quant of global supply chains. And I'm not alone in this. And I was thinking this while I was reviewing it, but actually on the wiki page they were talking about a lot of the similarities, because this is interoperability. This is interoperability applied to the global supply chain, but it's a technology that does not depend on its own chain. It doesn't depend on a company committing to that chain and that chain only, and then, you know, siloing that information. You know, we're trying to get away from siloed information and siloed data. And these guys have done an incredible job, both in the design, the continued development, feedback, and implementation from their clients, contact with the community. You know, their team is a solid team, but the proof is in the pudding with how much they're putting out. You know, the development that they continue to come out with and the partnerships that they continue to make. I mean, it all comes together just to give them a score of I mean, you see it. You know, GMX scored 44. These guys, scored 49, and it is what it is. I don't go back and fiddle with it. It's once I make the assessment, that's it. And you know, if this were 2019, I would have scored them at, they would be a supernova. I can say that. And, you know, I was part of a group who did score it back then and scored it extremely highly. Now, I didn't ride the pump for this one, but it ended up resulting in a 182x pump. And, the fact that it's already had that, you know, it downgraded it a little bit, but $15 million market cap, for a project that's pushing, delivering and positioning themselves, well connected. I mean, hey, you may have to wait a while, but for me, that's it's good probability of that pump that we saw in November not being the last pump. So, yeah, there it is, 49 out of 55. Hope you guys appreciated this review. I know a lot of it was a little bit surface level, and if you want to see the in-depth analysis, again, just go to subvertotradingclub.com. But this is if you're not already in the Discord. If you're in the Discord, go to the GameFi channel, the GameFi section, and look under the operations channel, and I'll be posting the in-depth analysis of this and GMX shortly. And you can look at the information I've collected there. It's much more in depth, and you'll see why I scored it so highly. But if you're not in the Discord already, just go to subvertotradingclub.com, enter your email address, put an alias name in, join the Discord, and get the review. If you guys would, please give me a like, and appreciate you tuning in today, and I'll see you next time. Cheers, guys.